live and online. It's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening at 6:30 on the dot. We are on time today, boys. Usually we're either a couple minutes early, a couple minutes behind. We are on point like a cactus on this Wednesday evening, halfway through the month of May, more than halfway through somehow, some way. Don't blink, but in 2 weeks we're going to be halfway through the year. That's how fast this year is moving right now. But good to be with you wherever you may be, however you may be watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, or however you got to us, rather. I guess we're only streaming on YouTube, but all over the place on a Wednesday, no less. Got Dominic Guanzon over here, one third of the show to help iron out my deficiencies in some ways. Trademark blue polo over here. Got Joe in the Kirkland signature hat over here. Where the hell did you get that?
The only place they sell Kirkland merch, dude, Costco.
Chelsea has Kirkland sweatpants and Kirkland slippers.
Dude, I want a Kirkland sweater. I'm going to go see a cover band called Panic at the Costco at a bar later in July.
That's good.
And like
I remember seeing that joke of a graphic a long time ago, and the fact that a band actually picked it up.
And I'm wearing this hat, and I'm trying to get the Kirkland signature sweater.
They're a Panic cover band, right? I'm assuming
they are. They like, you know, they of course they specialize in Panic, but they do a lot of the like
emo pop punk
like
thing.
When We Were Young festival type music.
Yeah.
My advice when you go to that show, Joe, optimistically, if you do get pointed out in the crowd, I would have one of these on hand. It doesn't have to be Chicago Blackhawks branded over here, but one of these good old underrated silver Sharpies over here. Because a black Sharpie ain't going to do you any good if you try to get an autograph from the lead singer of Panic at the Costco. So I would bring one of these silver Sharpies.
I have a gray one, actually. It was a two-pack.
Then never mind. Over here. Then you get yourself one of these. I got a bunch of Sharpies on my desk for some reason. But I was gonna say metallic Sharpies, very underrated. Just an FYI too. Always like the way the signature looks on a baseball or a hockey puck. The silver Sharpie over here. But yeah, again, I can't judge the Kirkland hat too much. I do have a Nutter Butter and a Hershey's Cookie Layer Crunch shirt that I've worn multiple times on this very show. So. Random branding over here, but kind of a random show today. There wasn't a whole lot out this weekend, not a whole lot of note really. There was that Hypnotic movie, which I'm glad we didn't I sat through, but I'm glad you guys didn't, because that thing sucked, that new Robert Rodriguez movie.
I'm eventually gonna go see it because I kind of it's just like I need to see more movies, so because I'm looking at like my top of list and it's like, okay, this is pretty solid so far this year. And then I look at my bottom list and I'm like, I got nothing so far. Like, I have to go see some movies just to see, like, does this qualify for me? So it's like, either I wait for it to come to streaming or catch on a matinee.
Yeah, Hypnotic is not good. I saw that. Like, I did see movies this weekend, just not a lot of note. I saw that Big George Foreman movie, which wasn't very good, and which they're losing their ass on that movie. That's going to be one of the biggest bombs of the year, truthfully, because that thing was not really cheap to make. That thing was like, I think almost $40 million, and it's made like 8, if that. It's an underrated bomb. Like, Affirm Films is going to be in a little bit of trouble now with this thing. And then I saw this random ass animated movie called Rally Road Racers, and it deserves the obscurity that's going to be shed upon it. But yeah, there wasn't much out. The only other thing of note, I guess, was that book club sequel, and like,
I heard that's another contender for worst of the year, actually.
You know, it sucks because I said when that Mafia Mama movie came out a couple weeks ago, or about a month ago, that Toni Collette movie, which really sucked. That's probably my worst of the year, honestly, right now. If the year ended tomorrow, that would be my worst of the year, is that Mafia Mama movie. It really sucks because, like, when I see these movies that are targeted towards like a 40-plus demographic that aren't good at all, I feel bad because it's like this demographic is so underserved in mainstream American cinema, and then the stuff that does come out is such pablum and is such crap that it really makes me feel bad for that demo that's already hard to get to the movies to begin with.
I mean, they kind of had 80 for Brady. I know that's more older people, but like that appeals to them almost in some way.
Oh, sure. I'm not saying it's been a totally down year for the older crowd, for the geriatric Ensure crowd.
But that's
here.
what they get. That's like what
I phrased that
if
wrong.
80 for
their
Brady is
endgame.
so far.
Yeah, exactly.
If 80 for Brady,
That's not what they deserve.
No. Like Hope Springs. I go back to Hope Springs. That was a great film. Or even that movie I just mentioned you guys I saw yesterday, the Emilio Estevez's The Way, that got re-released in theaters. I was in a crowd of about 20 people, all of whom older, and I'm like, this is dime entertainment for this demographic right here. And now if only you could stream the fucking thing anywhere, that would be wonderful, but it's not available to stream anywhere. So that's the give and take. But kind of a weird show today. We're gonna end with a nice little trailer reaction, which we don't do a lot of. But this movie coming out has been highly anticipated by you two, Dom and Joe, and I've recently fallen into the lore of it now as well after watching the teaser. I think this movie looks delicious. It's Five Nights at Freddy's, the new Blumhouse movie that is coming out in October, and I can't wait to review that on the show with you guys, and I can't wait to see it. Dime cast and Josh Hutcherson, Mary Stuart Masterson, and Matthew Lillard in this thing too. So I'm super pumped to talk about that 48-second teaser we got. The main movie, we were going to review this. We kept this in mind. I remember it was the Oscar show when the Daniels won for Everything Everywhere All at Once. This was the one movie that we hadn't seen. Joe, you saw Swiss Army Man, am I wrong?
I saw Swiss Army Man. This was always one I could have sworn I saw this movie, but then the more I watched it, I went, I don't think I actually ever saw this movie. But yeah, I have seen Swiss Army Man.
Yeah, the movie we're reviewing is The Death of Dick Long. It's not a movie by the Daniels. It's made by Daniel Scheinert. It's made by one half of the Daniels. It's Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. Kwan's got no involvement in this. This was just the gap movie in between. Because I remember Swiss Army Man came out in like 2016.
Yep.
And I was like, and then I heard like nothing about the Daniels then thereafter. And they had good momentum from that movie. And I didn't hear about this one until Everything Everywhere was going to come out, because I went back and looked. I'm like, did I miss something? And sure enough, I did. Because this is an A24 movie. It got a small release. And I'm talking a small release in that in its theatrical grossings is under $40,000.
Yeah.
Like this thing got a tiny release in September of 19. I totally missed this thing.
I wonder what the budget was.
Yeah, I'm curious too. I'm really
It's not
interested.
listed on Wikipedia.
No, it's not. It's not public, the budget. So I would think a couple million, 2 million maybe. I mean,
At most.
It's not
It's
even
handsome.
on IMDb. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, it's not on IMDb.
no, because honestly, if the budget's not on Wikipedia, the budget's probably not public, truthfully. I don't know what it cost, but it is handsome. It is a very handsomely made movie, to say the least. I never said the Daniels don't have talent behind the camera, but there's a reason that, like, even with the A24 lore that's ubiquitous, I think this one hasn't really caught on or found an audience. There's a lot of A24 movies. I encourage you too, if you haven't. Joe probably has, and the viewer as well. If you haven't, go to Wikipedia, type in list of A24 films. Like they've made more than you think.
Oh yeah.
And they've distributed more than you think. Number two, there is some ones over here that like there's a lot of movies they make that come and go even today. Like you just never hear about them. And even guys like us that are more entrenched than the common movie fan, like there's a ton of movies.
Yeah.
Like I'm just looking briefly. There was let me see here. Let me pick a good one over here because I do know a few of these. You ever heard of a movie called Close, directed by Lucas Daunt?
No.
Came out in earlier this year. Never knew of it. There was When You Finish Saving the World, the Jesse Eisenberg movie, which I did hear about. But like they had 3 movies released. They had 3 movies released in December. And I feel like The Whale just eclipsed all of them. You know, just really eclipsed all of them in buzz. And it's not like The Whale was a huge movie. But anyway, I'm really derailing
There's
here.
so many movies too. I go back and I'll like watch because it's like been on my radar and it's like, oh, I should eventually check this out. Like had no idea The Bling Ring was an A24 movie. Enemy. So just to know, like, okay, they've been around that long too is kind of crazy to think about. Tusk is another one, but
when I knew their name was Spring Breakers. That's what made me know their name was because it was a Harmony Korine movie. Harmony Korine does not do a lot of movies, so I was like, who's he working with now? Like what umbrella is he under at least now? That I distinctly remember when Spring Breakers came out in 2012, 2013. 13 came out the same year as The Bling Ring. Then I started paying attention to it, and I think that's how I wound up getting on like not only the radar, but like that's how I saw The Bling Ring was the buzz for that movie.
I've been seeing like I saw Ex Machina, but I still didn't know who they were, and other movies like what's it called, Swiss Army Man and stuff. The movie that made me start paying attention to, okay, this logo, I see it all the time, was It Comes at Night. That was the one where it made me go, okay, hold on, man, I must pay attention to the studio more often now.
That's another one too that like I feel is so underrated.
Mm-hmm.
That movie, I've seen that twice. The Joel Edgerton movie, that is so fucking good. Like, Dom, I assume you haven't watched it. That's a great one because that came out.
We talked about it a long time ago, and I think I remember the poster being really, really good. Which is
it was
the
a good
dog,
poster.
that dog just barking into the darkness.
Yeah, that's a good poster. And I remember like that came out, I think a year after It Follows did. And I remember thinking like, I kind of like this one more. I think this one's better. And It Follows was the festival darling, like the golden child, you know what I mean? Like of the festivals. And that's a really good movie too. But like It Comes at Night stayed with me. I almost thought like It Comes at Night was like if Paranormal Activity was like more of an art house thing as it went on with the sequels. I loved It Comes at Night. I think it made an honorable mention for me that year.
Totally random thing here, but speaking of the Paranormal Activity movies, I watched The Ghost Dimension for the very first time the other day.
What brought that on?
I was just sitting there on Paramount Plus. I'm like, I never caught up on the Paranormal Activity series after 4, and I didn't watch the marked ones, and I actually heard that one's actually kind of decent. So I was like, I'm gonna check out this. I'm like, because I wanted to see this one because I heard this one was like really bad. And I was just curious. Dude, I was laughing my ass off throughout that whole movie. It's so bad.
It's bad. And you know what? A lot of people didn't see Ghost Dimension in defense.
Yeah.
Not only because the lore had worn off. Don't forget, that was one of the two movies. That was one of the two movies that only AMC showed because of the video on demand beef between Cinemark and Regal that refused to show it because it was going to go to streaming shortly after. That's how, it wasn't that long ago, but it feels like it. Yeah, that's why a lot of people didn't see that one because it was only AMC was the only theater. It was that and it was Scout's Guide. Those were the two movies that got screwed. Because of that whole thing, and they're both Paramount movies. So
I think we got a show to
anyway.
do
I know we got a show to do. And again, this is my rambling to show I don't have.
That's why I haven't been saying much.
This is Dom's like, I got work in the morning. Let's hurry this up.
Looking at this A69 Love Fest right here.
69 Nooch. The Death of Dick Long, though, is our movie tonight that we should be talking about, but I just don't have a ton to say, so that was kind of my stalling on that. This is not a common movie, so I'll give the brief plot synopsis over here as opposed to really general thoughts, but it involves, the movie starts with this, like, these three dudes. Their names are Zeke, Earl, and Dick. And Dick's played by Shiner. He's played by the director. And they're in a rock band. They're like this is funny. They're like an even shittier Creed. And essentially, what happens is they get drunk and high one night during rehearsal and stuff. And then it cuts, really. And then Zeke and Earl have to drive Dick to the hospital. They steal his ID and they leave him. They dump him. He's like bleeding profusely. And they dump him outside of the ER, which is kind of like, it kind of feels like almost like a Psycho sort of send up right there. But anyway, what happens is then it's basically dealing with the fallout of this. Like, Dick's dropped off at the hospital. He's dead. And the doctors are like trying to figure out what's wrong with him. And I don't know how much I want to give away. Like, rectal bleeding is involved. That's all I'll say. And it's weird that I'm smiling as I say
the trailer shows them playing with fireworks.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's set in Alabama. You can kind of do the rest from there.
But the movie essentially deals with the fallout of this whole thing. Like, Zeke Zeke leaves, he's got a wife and daughter, and he tries his best to kind of leave them in the dark, even though he's not very, nobody's very bright nor intelligent in this movie. And that's sort of the crux of this. There are these two like police officers who I think are probably the best characters in the whole damn thing. Sarah Baker and Janelle Cochran. They're kind of like Fargo. Like this movie's, we messaged this thing.
Yeah.
Right? We messaged a little bit about it last night, and Joe said Southern Fargo, and I said stupid Fargo. That's really what this is. It's Fargo, but everybody's an even bigger moron.
It's already kind of a redundant.
I mean, everybody's even dumber than in Fargo. Like, but anyway, that's sort of the premise of this. So it's kind of like a backwards ass detective story, because we don't figure out totally what happened to Dick until about halfway. Zeke and Earl are trying to cover this up and like dump the car in the marsh, and they're terrible at covering this thing up. So the police poke holes in everything. Again, they took Dick's license, so they're trying to cover this up. They're trying to cover the ignominy of his death up in such ridiculous ways. But here's the ironic part, though. The way I just described this movie is not really a comedy. This movie, and I think the thing that I didn't vehemently dislike this movie, but I think the problem with this movie was, at the end of the day, is its tone. It's got a lot of tonal shifts to this thing, and about the 50-minute mark, it goes to try and play this thing very seriously. Very seriously. Like, almost in spite of its ridiculous premise, it tries to ground this in reality, and it seems almost like disassociated with itself in a way. I said a lot there. I gave the plot synopsis and kind of already went into critiques. I'm all over the place. Shut me up, Joe. What did you think of the death of Dick Long?
So again, I don't know if we were on air while saying this. Maybe we were in the green room, but like, this was a movie I thought I saw because this came out in 2019, and I remember seeing trailers for it because 2019 was a hot streak for A24. You had The Lighthouse, you had Uncut Gems, and Midsummer.
Oh wow!
I mean, you had those three movies from that, and that's not including the other movies they had in 2019 as well. I mean, like, hell, if I were to go to the Wikipedia page, there's plenty more. Like, there, Under the Silver Lake's another one that was like, very limited release. The Last Black Man in San Francisco, which didn't really get a wide release, it got a very, very limited release. So there's a lot of cool stuff that came out in 2019. Waves was another one that I saw that was really good. So I thought I saw this movie. Turns out, I think I just saw the trailer so many times when going to see an A24 movie that I just was like, oh yeah, I've seen The Death of Dick Long. That's a good movie. Because
it's got the black and gold and the muted color palette and everything, and the very handsome production. Like, yeah, no, this fits in their repertoire very nicely.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, The Farewell, like, that's another one too. Jesus Christ, they were on a hot streak that year. So I just saw a ton of stuff that like they put out that year, and it was like, oh man, like, I guess I saw that movie. It turns out, yeah, I think I just saw the trailer 10 times. Now, actually seeing the movie, I realized I was like, I definitely didn't see it, but I kind of wish I did because I had a good time watching this movie. Steve is right in terms of its identity of what this movie does want to be. I did kind of feel that towards the reveal of like what went down leading to Dick's like death. It does take a shift, and you do feel it. But I feel like after that, it kind of goes back to being a dark comedy. It's just like within this like 20-minute like sphere of like everything going down, it's being revealed. A character's life is kind of going in shambles. It kind of just bounces back to being like a dark comedy and everything. I think also what doesn't help too is that like Zeke is definitely like who's played by Michael Abbott Jr. He's definitely played as like the straight man throughout this movie, like the character we're following the most and everything. But he has Earl to bounce off of, who's played by Andre Hyland, and Earl's just I hate to use our one F word, even though sometimes we break this rule all the time, but he's a fucking idiot throughout this movie. Every time you think like Zeke's just being stupid, Earl will one-up him, and Earl just will not realize how stupid he'll be. He comes in smoking a vape, and he'll be like, damn, dude, that, like, sucks. Like, I wish I could help. And it's just like, bro, you're part of this situation. Like, why aren't you, like, more, like, aware of, like, what's going on and everything?
And the tone doesn't, like, play up to that, like, to his level of character. You know what I mean? Like how stupid. It doesn't sell how stupid he is because of the self-seriousness around it.
I do feel like like when it's scenes with those two, like there's a scene where he has to go drop off Zeke's daughter at like the kindergarten that she goes to, or first grade, whatever it is, and like he's talking to Dick's wife, who's a teacher at this school. And like at this point, Dick is dead in the movie. He dies like in the first like 5 minutes.
He does die. That's not a spoiler.
Yeah, the movie's called The Death of Dick Law.
It's in the damn title.
And there's like a point like he's like having a conversation with her, and just the way he's handling it, like you could tell like this dude like just has no sense of like social cues, nothing. He does not know how to carry himself. He doesn't know how to, and I mean this all in like a good way. He's doing such a great job at a performance. I'm just laughing my ass off at it. Like he literally reminds me of like, so in Fargo, we have like the husband that like gets his wife abducted and everything. But if you watch the Fargo TV show, this character, God, I already forgot the name, Earl. It just reminds me of more of like the characters you see on the TV show who are just oblivious to the crimes that they're doing, and just don't care at all. And I kind of like those characters a lot. And I thought the interactions between him and Zeke were some of the best parts about the movie. And unfortunately, like the first half of this movie to me is really good. Not to say the second half isn't bad. I did enjoy it, but Earl leaves halfway through the movie and he's just gone. And it kind of just feels like the like energy that he was bringing to a lot of scenes, and just like kind of like, oh, I can't wait to hear what he says next. It just kind of leaves with him, and like no one really replaces him in that sense, and it gets a lot more depressing in the second half too. Despite it still being a dark comedy, there's just moments where it's like, oh, this is kind of messed up and sad. But that being said, I did still enjoy the movie. It's it's out of A24's catalog of movies. I'm kind of just like, yeah, it's whatever. Like, it's like I've seen better from A24, even though they're not the studio that really creates this movie. They just publish them. But I'm gonna pass it off to Dom real quick.
I really enjoyed this movie because even though I share many of the same critiques, but I don't think they bothered me as much as you did, Steve. Particularly because in that second half, which I do agree is not as strong, but the thing that got me is that, yes, it does get very dramatic kind of quickly. And it gets very family drama. This marriage is seemingly falling apart. They're yelling at each other. There's some very intense close-ups here. You mental breakdowns. But the thing I think that it makes it, the joke of it all, the crucial thing of it all, is what they discover about the main character, which is such a pivotal thing. Like that is the joke, and I don't want to spoil it, even though this has been out for a while. I don't want to spoil it because that is the joke for me. That even though they're having all this intense family drama, like a lot of it classic, like get out of the house, break some glass, and he's like whatever, frustrated washing of dishes. It's the overarching joke that is like hangs in the background of all of that. The situation itself, that was so funny, and the reveal is hilarious with the parallel scenes of the hospital and him trying to explain to his wife what happened. That was great. That was fantastic. And then everything from there, it's like, yeah, no matter how straight we play this happened, and you are going like that's a fact of life. This dude died because of this. And I think the intention is that, yeah, this is going to be the joke for the rest of the movie. Like, or rather, this is going to be the thing that propels their what carries the humor for the rest of the movie. And it's surprisingly effective. Not as much as I think they hoped it would be, particularly for that long. But that's why I don't think it bothered me as Steve, your critique, which I do agree with, and especially like the last 5 to 7 minutes where they're doing like the wrap up and like here's what's happening with all the characters. Yeah. It shows a lot of heart at the end there, but we kind of lose a little bit of that, and it plays with some dark, like how dark it wants to get. It's dark straight away because some dude dies, and they have to deal with this death, and it's like, oh my god, are we going to get charged with murder or something? But mostly it's just from the beginning, after the title sequence, after that, it's just a spiral downwards, and that it's a car wash, car collision. It's a car crash in slow motion, and it's like, when is it gonna fall apart? How is it gonna happen? These two are freaking idiots, which is why if you're someone who is bothered by illogical people in movies, don't watch this movie because you're just gonna tear your hair out. To me, I mean, it's totally excusable because
it didn't bother me.
Yeah, it's not at all, because it's an accident, and also this is set in Alabama, and
It's like
the movie
small town Alabama.
they let you know. I don't mean to be prejudiced against rural folk and people from Alabama, but this movie drives the message home that this is in Alabama, because there are just random shots of like people doing just mundane, seemingly stupid shit around
like
town.
It's a nowhere to stoplight town where everybody knows everybody. There's like no career opportunity whatsoever.
100%.
You know what I mean? And like you just get the sense that, like, it's, I always say, to quote the great country artist Luke Bryan, born here, live here, die here.
My favorite shot in the movie, just to kind of set the tone of how this town is that there's a woman mowing her lawn, and her lawn has like a really steep hill that leads into the street. And in order to mow that lawn, she ties a rope around the lawnmower and lowers it down the lawn and then pulls it back.
But that kind of shit I like.
That's awesome.
Those
and it's just like
I'm not shitting on that. I'm not shitting on that because people do that, and it's kind of ingenious.
It is.
But that's so much. That shot has so much character.
It really
just
does.
in and of
It
itself.
really
It does. And and you know what I said early, like, to myself watching that, is that like those little, and I get the movie can't all be background B-roll over here, but those little scenes and those little fragments of this area I liked a lot, because you know what it reminded me of, and this is heavy praise for a movie I'm not going to give a very positive review to, but that little shot right there reminded me of Gummo. Harmony Korine's Gummo, his very first movie, which I don't think you two saw, which is about, it's a long story short, it's about a fictional town in Ohio called Xenia, and it's shot documentary style, and made on no money, and it's actually in this like rural impoverished community. A lot of these actors aren't even actors, they're playing pretty much themselves, and it basically shows you this town that was devastated by a tornado years ago that never fully recovered, and like all of its residents, and like just the weirdness of it. But it has like a certain, like, it falls in between like irony and dark humor, and like also an appreciation and fondness of the area. Gummo's a weird, I highly recommend it. It's really strange. There's a great that scene of that woman. This is going to make no sense to you guys having seen it, but the one person that's seen Gummo watching this will get it. That scene of the woman pulling the lawnmower with the rope to cut it down that like long hill, that slope, reminded me of the scene in Gummo where this boy takes a bath in like filthy brown like Flint, Michigan water, and there's a strip of bacon taped to the wall. That's what that reminded me of, and it's a beautiful scene in the whole goddamn movie. I'm telling you, you gotta watch Gummo.
You told me so much right there.
You gotta watch Gummo. It's a masterpiece. But you know what? I want to give credit to Matt Cipolla of the website The Spool, because you know what I did was I was like, because I'm not going to write a review of this. I'm going to let this episode serve as the review of this with your guys' opinion too. But what I did was, and this probably isn't the healthiest thing to do as a critic, but I did this. Like I kind of wrapped my mind around it after I watched it and how I felt about it and how I was like really mixed to mediocre feeling about this movie. So I went over to Rotten Tomatoes and I went to like the negative review tab, and I'm like, why does everybody else, can somebody concretize why this movie didn't do it for me? And Matt Cipolla of The Spool did it really well. He one of his lines, I won't read the whole thing, but one of his lines he says in this thing, he says, it's like in his review, it's like hanging out with a movie, seeing stuff happen, but not quite getting involved. And that's a perfect, I feel like that's a great distillation of how I felt, like within arm's reach of a movie.
And
like,
it bothers you. You don't like that.
Yeah, and again, it's not like I vehemently dislike this thing.
Right.
But
that was a negative.
Felt alienated by it. And I guess I can't say, you didn't see Swiss Army Man, did you?
I really wanted to, but I didn't. And that just seems like it's right up my alley.
And I wasn't crazy about that one either. I famously, I think I said in my review when we did a review of Everything Everywhere, I said I distinctly remember it. For the first 20 minutes watching that movie in theaters, I thought I was watching the worst movie of the year. I really did. I really did. I fucking hated the first 20 minutes of it. I couldn't. I was almost disgusted by it. Like, not the premise and everything, but just the execution and the weirdness of the whole thing. But then it got better because it went on to get sincere off of its absurdity. And The Death of Dick Long does a very similar thing, but I just don't think sells it well enough. And I don't think it's ever, like, Swiss Army Man was funny, was like effectively funny at times. And it went on to have like a greater, not only have like a sincerity at the end, but like a greater theme. I didn't love it, but I understood it a little bit better. Where this, I don't know. I never found it very funny, and I never found it really interesting outside of the way it was shot and the way it was filmed, which I think, again, which I will say again, is very handsome.
Yeah. It's this movie taps into a certain spectrum of humor that I enjoy, which is just this crazy thing happened and we're going to keep, like, it's the impetus for everything.
Yeah.
And the first half, it makes it a mystery. The second half is just the fallout of it all. I mean, all of it is the fallout of the incident, but particularly once you know what happened. And it's like, this is so ridiculous. We're going to bank on that joke. And that, to me, makes me laugh. I'm the kind of person that will just like, yeah, that really just happened. Like, that was a thing that happened in history. Like Germany really thought they could take on the world in the Second World War. That was just a thing that they thought they could do. I think that's a Norm Macdonald joke. It's like, yeah, they thought they could do it twice and they almost won. That is a Norm Macdonald joke.
That's totally a Norm Macdonald joke.
And like, it's just that kind of humor and that kind of thing. That's the stuff where, like, even like the surface jokes will make me chuckle, but then just the meta of it all will just make me cry laughing.
If this premise of this movie was a bit by Norm Macdonald, I think it would be a goddamn masterpiece.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I would have loved.
And that's a huge compliment to Daniel.
ChatGPT, can you?
That's a huge compliment to Daniel Scheinert over here, and Billy Chu. Actually, Billy Chu's the writer of this. Give credit where credit's due. But yeah, that's a huge credit because I didn't put that connection though. But yeah, there is a decisively like Norm Macdonald-ish thing going on over here with like almost anti-humor and like a ton of exposition and like, yeah, here's the punchline. That's the punchline, casually delivered.
Even in its most dramatic, serious, straight moments. This happened to Dick Long, and it's God damn, that made.
And his name is Dick Long.
Exactly. The irony of that is so good. The title, this is one of the best titled movies I've seen in a long time.
I really admittedly only laughed. I only like really audibly laughed once.
On Wikipedia.
The poster's
so
great.
Good.
The poster's really good. I said everything like visually related to this movie I think is great. I think is really strong here. Ashley Connor did a phenomenal job with the cinematography. But the one joke that I did audibly laugh out loud to is it the cop? I think it's the cop who doesn't know that Dick is short for Richard.
Yeah.
That I found funny, and then where that goes, like, where how do you get Dick out of Richard?
Yeah,
ask his wife. Like that I laughed at. I'm like, okay, the movie needed more.
That's such a trope too.
Or this offbeat shit. That was, I mean, the whole thing's offbeat, but it needed some more of that, like, effectively dry wit.
Yeah, it's such a trope too, because it's like usually it's something mundane. That's like a pivotal. It's like, oh yeah, it was Sorman on Wednesday, but whatever. And then it's like, wait a second. Usually it doesn't. And it was something mundane that triggers like oh yeah, this is the pivotal piece. But no, it's like it's that stupid ass joke that does it. It's like stuff like that you're right. I wish it had more of, and I wish, like, Steve, what was your opinion on the character Earl, who's just like the dim-witted half of the duo?
Yeah.
Did you
again,
like him? Was he annoying to you, or was he
wasn't
funny?
annoyed. I wasn't really annoyed. I just felt like
Neutral?
I was more neutral, but I just felt like his character, his performance. I think the performer in question too, Andre Hyland. I think that his performance is pretty good. The problem is the tone. He almost feels like he was plucked out of a different movie in some cases.
Dude, okay.
He feels like he's dragging it more to the comedy side, but the surrounding tone doesn't match his performance. I had no fault with him. I just felt like, if this movie was a touch funnier and a touch more like humorous or like comedic in a drier sense, like the whole Dick Richard, in a mundane sense, like you were saying, right. I think he would have been more effective. I think he's just failed by kind of a movie that just doesn't know what tone it wants to adopt.
This is a very tough. That's a very tough thing. That is easily the biggest problem of this movie that I think we're all coming to conclusion here, and that's such a difficult thing to handle as a director.
It is
that whenever we have that criticism, which we have kind of semi often, it's like I don't even know how to relate to that, because that's such a macro thing. You have to have so much foresight, such clarity of vision, and it's you can shoot. Yeah, it can be in the edit.
Yeah,
you could be doomed from the shots themselves, and it's like, dude, if you shoot all that and then like in the edit, you're like, oh my god, I don't know how to do this. It's like, I don't know if we can save this in the edit, and it's like or like save the tone, or have the consistency in the edit. That's so hard.
I think I almost, when I was watching the credits, I think I almost found out it was a slight revelation of like, okay, again, I didn't love Swiss Army Man. Really liked Everything Everywhere All at Once, like most people before it got nominated for a million awards. But when I was watching the credits, I was like, you know what? What if Shiner wrote this? What if he wrote this? Because he didn't write it. He didn't. He was not the screenwriter of this. Okay. I said if he wrote this, and it's markedly similar to Swiss Army Man. It really is. Which I
see similarities in everywhere.
I see why Shiner directed this. I can totally see that. But like, I wonder, I'm like, if he wrote this, I think it might have pushed this over the edge a bit. And it would have had more of a clarity of vision too. Like that. That's just what I think. And Billy Chu, and I don't have his filmography in front of me, but he doesn't have a Wikipedia page, so I can't imagine he's done a ton that's been super noteworthy. I don't want to pass off judgment, but I'm just saying. I really would have liked to seen the version of this that was written by Shiner, that was written by the director of this. I think that would have been better, especially since Shiner was at least half established after Swiss Army Man.
Yeah.
You want to cut the break? We'll come back with final thoughts.
Yeah,
I think so.
I like it. I think this has been a really good review from the three of us too. Mm-hmm. So we will take a quick Zoom-sponsored intermission right here and come back very quickly, 60 to 90 seconds, to give our final thoughts on the death of Dick Long. And oh yeah, we got a trailer to react to as well. We got all that and more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We're live, Sleepless with Steve, on this Wednesday night. We are back live and in living color on Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube, wherever you may be, however you may be listening to us on this Wednesday evening, talking about the death of Dick Long. Don't worry, the actor who played Dick Long is alive and well. This is the movie title. Again, you know what? I'll tell you right now, too. Like, well, Dom mentioned it briefly. Love this poster of this thing. I really do. The poster makes me want to love the movie.
It's so freaking. It's so well, like it's so beautifully shot, and
it gives off first shot vibes too. I don't know, like first take vibes. Like that was the very first one they took, and it just nailed it. Like it gives off first shot vibes to me.
The typeface of like the title and everything is so good.
Yeah, the poster's beautiful, and again, I stress again that like this movie has like this very bright sepia tone to it as well that I liked a lot as too. It's almost got this neo-noir vibe to it, like a movie like Galveston.
Yeah,
like it's got a
neo-noir
detective
angle. The mystery angle definitely gives it off.
I didn't get tired of looking at it.
Adds to the hilarity. That adds to the hilarity.
I didn't get tired of looking at this thing. I'll say that. But I did wind up wishing that the death of Dick Long was the death of Dick Shorter. I'm not gonna lie on that one. Yeah, I kind of said my piece with it. I had more to say about it than I initially thought going into it, but it's a strange movie. But I'll say this: even though I'm gonna be low on my rating, maybe compared to you guys, I'll always appreciate a weirdly ambitious yet flawed movie as opposed to a fairly decent movie that's pretty standard fare and linear and down the line. So, you know, again, the Daniels, I know Quan had nothing to do with this movie, but the Daniels signed a 5-picture deal with Universal Pictures, and unless they morally offend me, I plan to see all 5.
Oh, nice.
So I look forward to whatever they do, because it gets me talking, like, and all 3 movies, Swiss Army Man, Death of Dick Long, and Everything Everywhere, have led to really good discussions with people on top of really good reviews like this one. So I admire it for that. It's like a nice coffee table book. It's a conversation piece, if nothing else. Even though I think we're
imagine just having that poster on your coffee table, like, oh yes, the Death of Dick Long.
Yeah, a photography book or something, you know. And it feels pretty cool to be among like the 77 people that have seen this thing as well, probably as well.
Yeah.
So it's 2 out of 4 for me. I wish I could wrap my arms around it more. I really do. But I like I said, I rebounded. I was really convinced watching Swiss Army Man for like the first 20 minutes that this was going to be a solid 1-star movie. And it got up to 2.5 in my book though. So that was, you know, it exhausted a lot of good faith out of me and a lot of contradictions mentally that I guess I maxed out by the time I hit this one though. But I admire it. I still like Scheinert as a director. I think he's interesting. I think they get you talking, and I think that's half the battle. But it's 2 out of 4 stars from me for the Death of Dick Long. We'll go Dom, then Joe. Final thoughts.
I enjoyed this movie very much so for it's not even the weirdness. It's just that lingering joke that stays in your mind throughout it all, and the mystery, the backwards mystery aspect, the things fall apart, you know, Jenga tower on its last legs, you know, trying to keep that from falling apart thing. It was surprisingly propelling it forward for me. I agree that the tonal shifts, Steve, you said it best, that it feels like that one character was plucked from a different movie. The drama part in the 3rd act felt, even though I enjoyed how they played it straight, it did feel from a different movie. And even the ending montage, even the credits, the scene as the credits begin to roll, and right before that felt like from a 3rd movie. And as much as that shift is, Steve, I have to agree with you. I am so thankful that, like, you know, the blonde police officer, she wasn't played by like Melissa McCarthy in like the Melissa McCarthy that we hate. You know, I'm so glad that it wasn't like wacky, you know, the senior cop, the smoking one, that she wasn't like overly, you know, like, you know what, you know, you know that kind of movie I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's like, so
they're too dumb to function.
100%. Even though that is how the characters are in this movie, there is a it's more Fargo than that. Fargo really is the best. Southern Fargo really is the best descriptor here. 3, like 0.25, halfway to 3.5. for me, because I just enjoy that type of humor where it's not too dark, and there are just these anchoring jokes that stay with you, and it's like you have a grin on your face describing the plot, which surprisingly is like, I feel like that's how this movie got made, where I mean, that's how most movies get made, but really something about like, hey, do you hear about this one guy that he died this way? And then it's like it just propels itself into a whole story. But yeah, three stars, a very solid 3 stars for me.
Yeah, I'm more in agreement with what Dom was saying. I did enjoy this for its humor when, you know, like, and yeah, the whole one note joke, even though I was agreeing about the whole tone and everything. The whole thing of, yeah, like, I mean, you heard me laugh literally when it was like when Dom just said, yeah, this is how Dick Long died. It still makes me laugh right fucking now.
That scene, that parallel scene where it's like, oh god, that's the best scene in the movie.
It's such a, it is like a fucked up way to go and everything, but it's just like within like how dumb these people have been throughout the movie. It's like, you know what? It makes sense for a person to die like this in a movie like this, honestly. Yeah, man. It is enjoyable. You know, like, and I am in complete agreement with you guys. Out there somewhere, like, you know, I probably, if I really thought about it, I can think of a movie. But there's like a mainstream studio movie that tries to be like the Coen Brothers movie, and they just don't know how to do the
Coen Brothers, yeah.
Yeah, like they'll try to copy that
Fargo.
style, and it's just like, hey, like, you know, have a wacky character do this, have them be absurd and weird and stupid like this, but like, you know, they'll get somebody that like just doesn't know how to, like, you know, adapt something like that. You know, one half of the Daniels at least like does for the most part. You know, they can handle a movie pretty well, and like Steve said, they're great films to talk about. I've enjoyed talking about all their movies, and this one too. I mean, like I kind of took more of the backseat during this review because I was really enjoying the conversation you two were having. But you guys are all hitting on points that like I think are fair, and then, like, you know, actually bring up really cool stuff. If there's one thing I would love to see from this movie, if A24, you know, they sent us these, I don't know if I have one on my desk right now. I don't think I do. But they sent us these, like, magazines of, like, you know, catalog films that they've made or up-and-coming movies. Like, the most recent one was all Brendan Fraser, like, images. I would love if they, like, had, like, a Daniels one where it's, like, they do another A24 movie with them and everything. And I would love to see just all the photos from, like, all their films. Everything Everywhere All at Once, Swiss Army Man, and this movie, too. Because I would love to see some of those stills of just the community they live in, because it is a beautifully shot movie. And like there were just times like when they're just driving around town and it's just the B-roll footage. I had a lot of fun just paying close attention to just little details about this town, and just its setting. It really actually made me believe like the era they lived in was just like totally like just like this. Like, they're just incompetent people out here, and I mean that in a sincere way. It's just like, hey, this town usually doesn't. You know, a better way of saying is, a town like this would never experience something like this. So when something like this does go down, they're just flabbergasted and caught off guard, and it's just funny watching them be like, yeah, this murder or this death that we are dealing with. So we're trying to piece it together, and the more we're piecing it together, the more we're just like, what the fuck is going on here? For me, it's 3 out of 4 stars.
Pushed it over the edge for you. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Good review. Very nice review of the death of Dick Long. We remember him fondly. Yeah, I'm glad we reviewed this. I almost said I'm glad we touched on this. And following the death of Dick Long, that was not a very good way to put it. But yeah, it led to an interesting discussion. I had more to say than I thought, though, so that was good. I know you guys are going to have maybe more to say or more to enlighten, I guess, than me on this. I'll briefly say this, and I could go over. Joe and Dom have actually played the damn games. I haven't. I just read the synopses of the first 3 games. But Five Nights at Freddy's is finally getting a movie after a little bit of lingering. I don't want to say development hell because it's been in production for about 7 years, and that's not 8 years, so that's really not a huge amount of time in the grand scheme of filmmaking, but it did go through some delays in production, though. So we're finally getting it, though, which is exciting. Five Nights at Freddy's comes out October 27th. It's based on the popular video game series. This is based on the whole franchise, right? Or this isn't a direct adaptation of the first game, I don't think.
So, you know what, Dom? I'll let you take this one, actually, because you probably know a little bit more about the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's than I do, but I do think it is taking more than just one game.
Let me say this. I've actually never played the games, but like hands-on
I
on
thought
the
you
controller.
played them.
No. I've seen people play them. I've been in the room with people who played them, but you know me, I'm not a horror guy. And this is more like jump scare horror. That's literally what this whole thing is. It's just jump scares. That's the basis of that's the loop. That is for all 7 of these freaking things. That's the loop. But yeah, it looks to be, if not a 1-to-1 adaptation, it's certainly a straightforward adaptation. This isn't going to be like Guillermo del Toro's take on Pinocchio, where it's like, oh, we're going to make this even darker. No, it seems to be playing up all the aspects of this thing that the original did. And Scott Cawthorn, the creator, the indie developer who made the first one and pretty much all the rest of them, and did a lot of stuff to promote that. He had been a long time game developer, a devout Christian, which is kind of important because he made a lot of Christian games, and his conservative views proved to be a little problematic later on, but he dedicated, once Five Nights at Freddy's came along and became a massive hit online, he dedicated to that series, that franchise, that baby, which say what you will about how derivative the other games got, how kind of he could not capture thunder or lightning twice. However you think about that, he dedicated to this franchise, and kudos to that. He was involved. He wrote like a novel. I think he's, I don't know how involved he is with the movie itself. I don't know if
I want to say when it gets closer, don't tempt me with a good time, but I was just actually looking at photos from the graphic novels of this thing, and don't tempt me with a good time. I might read some of these.
He made a great world. It's the perfect thing for our age group. Perfect scare, the perfect setting. It plays into all of our fears, which is
I mean, for people who don't know, because I don't want to. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I mean, for people who don't know, like the game essentially, I'm just going to give the bare Cliff Notes version of this thing, but like the game takes place in a fictional pizzeria, and it's called Freddy
Cheese, like esque type of pizzeria.
Very much so. It's called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and essentially you take the role of a security guard, a night security guard in this pizzeria, and you have to defend yourself from these animatronic characters. I think there's 4 of them that come to life at night in the pizzeria. And essentially, and this is where I think this is hilarious at the same time, like petrifying. Essentially, you're taking directions from voicemail messages left by the previous guy who worked as a security guard, who gives you insight into how these animatronic figures operate. They come alive at night and they turn homicidal. And essentially, in the game, if one of these animatronics catches you, or they see a human, they mistake them as like the animatronic like endoskeleton of it, like before like the fur and the costume is put on, so they try to stuff you into a costume, and that's what kills you. And I think that is like morbidly fascinating right there. And so it's a survival horror game. It's a point and click game. At least the first one was. But again, like Dom, and this is why I wanted to chime in with Dom saying that like it's perfect for our generation, because we were the Chuck E. Cheese generation, and those animatronics were always fucking weird. They were always odd. There was something like fascinating about them, but also deeply terrifying. And if you've ever seen videos of those things when they're turned off at night, like if you've ever seen like videos or like ones that have been like garbage or trash or malfunctioning, I've gone down those rabbit holes before.
Did you ever peek behind the curtain? Like did you ever, like, what, when the curtains closed at Chuck E. Cheese and all the animatronics are off? The restaurant is open. The restaurant is totally open, but the curtains are closed, and like a bunch of kids would try to get in there and like look behind, and often you would, and it's like that. Right, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know how old Scott Cawthorn is, but if he probably did that.
He's 44, so he's right in the age. It's
like it's like the whole millennial spectrum, totally into that. And he's like, he probably did that, and that was like the impetus for it all. That's maybe, I don't know, but that is, God, I have so many vivid memories of Chuck E. Cheese. Most of them
too.
good, some of them not. But
I've heard the term years ago when I was watching some video expose on like Chuck E. Cheese, like from a business standpoint. And it was like maybe 5-6 years ago. I heard it referred to as a child casino, and that's all I think about now. Like it really, like now I know why I love casinos. Now I know why I love blackjack. Like it's exactly what you walk into one of those places. I haven't been in one of those places probably since Bush was president, but. Yeah, the flashing lights, everything is catered to like the sensory overload of a kid. It's the wild fucking west in those places.
My favorite Chuck E. Cheese memory has to be, this was after when I was older. I have some little cousins, so that was the excuse to go back to Chuck E. Cheese, and I'm just like standing there watching them play. And then this wasn't a thing I think when we were kids, but one of the attendants, the employees, she came out with like a giant cup of like tickets, like torn up like one at a time tickets, and she was just going through the middle of the arcade, or like going around the arcade, just kind of throwing them in the air. And shit. Behind her, a bunch, like the kids, of course, the kids are like, "Oh hey, free tickets!" So then they're just following her, picking stuff off the ground, and I'm like, if this ain't just like some metaphor for rich people throwing scraps at the peasants. Like, and that's what got me. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Can I tell you one other anecdote? It's not Chuck E. Cheese, but it's very related. There's a place we'll go on the home front here. There's a place in Lombard called Enchanted Castle.
Oh, dude, Enchanted Castle.
Now, yes. Enchanted Castle, I went to triple the amount of times that I did Chuck E. Cheese.
It was Chuck E. Cheese on steroids.
Up until I would say mid to late high school, me and my dad, because my dad's off on Mondays, we would go on Monday holidays like Veterans Day or Martin Luther King Day. We would make the drive to Lombard, the two of us, and we would go to Enchanted Castle. Now, here's the funny thing. We would get there ass early. Like, it opens at 10. We get there at 9:50.
Like you're going to Six Flags?
We get there, but here was the best part, though, because my dad wanted to be early and home before noon for everything. Like, here was the best part about doing that, though, and I bet you Chuck E. Cheese is the same way. They have a lot of attendants at least they did in Enchanted Castle at the time, that would go around and test the games. They go around and test the games, and I remember any tickets they would win, they just left at the machine because it's no incentive for them. I'll never forget. This was a common thing. I'd be walking around. There's not many people. It's 10:05 on a Monday and nobody's here yet. And I'm walking around and there's like 150 tickets out of the skee ball machine. Grab. I'm serious.
What a hack. Oh my God.
I'm serious, man. It pays to be early. And then I could listen to my father bitch that they didn't serve beer until noon.
Beer. That's why the beer is such an excellent strategic choice for those places, because that's what my dad went for, was the beer and the cheap pizza, and then it was the salad bar for all the women.
My dad asked the attendant the one time, he goes, "What time do you," whereas on one of these Mondays or whatever, it was like 10:15. My dad asked the attendant, he goes, "What time do you guys serve beer?" Not till 12 o'clock. My dad seriously asked the attendant, and you guys know my dad. My dad seriously asked the attendant,
owner of a liquor store,
"Why don't you open at noon then?" Why don't you open at noon then?
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Anyway,
we can get carried. We could probably spend the rest of the show doing that.
But there's a deep-seated lore of animatronics, is what I'm getting at.
It plays into it very well, because this game is such a phenomenon. Joe, I'm sure you've played it, like hands-on played it, and the ingenious nature of the gameplay is so effective and so addicting. At least that's what I've been told.
That whole idea, like, if you've ever seen the movie Source Code, is what I'm going to use an example here for people.
With Jake Gyllenhaal?
With Jake Gyllenhaal. I'm going to use that as an
example.
I
love that movie. Yeah.
Fantastic movie. Amazing movie. A movie's all about him dying and restarting the level.
Yeah.
And not literally a level. There's a whole other thing. If you haven't seen that movie, go check it out. It's a really good sci-fi movie. But it's definitely one of those like Groundhog Day scenarios. But Five Nights at Freddy's, the games, are definitely that. It is learning from your mistake and being like, okay, on night 3, Chica is going to be moving down the hallway on the left side, and I need to make sure I seal the door on the left side. Now, when that happens, Freddy is going to be communicating me, and it's like, you're keeping all this in mind. It's like a puzzle game, basically, of just like
and you get a
trial
little
and
bit
error.
further each time.
Yeah,
You get a
trial
little bit
and error,
further
yeah.
each time.
Like, because people who play these games and like think like, oh man, like you always die a ton. It's just made to scare you. It's like that's kind of like it's kind of the fun of the game, though. Like you pay $5 for this game. It's not like a $60 video game that we usually get. It's $5 for a great little thing to play at Halloween time and to scare your friends. Oh my god, dude! My friend had a theater screen in his basement that we could hook up his PC to,
Oh,
and we played.
That's cool.
We played Five Nights at Freddy's 1, 2, and 3 on his PC there, and it was so much fun. Like, each kid would just take over, and like we would do the thing where the voicemails, the kid that would come in, the kid that's getting off the computer to go sit in the auditorium now to watch it, he would be like, okay, I noticed this, and I noticed this, and we just
it's like you have the voicemail.
yeah, we would
That's
pass
really
along
fun.
the information.
That's sweet.
This game does so well as strangely as a party game, or at least
It really was.
people
yeah.
watching you play it, which is what I did. I never hands-on played it because I can't do jump scares
I would so watch either of you play this.
I'm honestly so down. Like the week this comes out, just on this channel, I stream the game. Like I'll be.
That's what honestly. Oh, sorry, but that's honestly like how that a lot of streamers. A lot of YouTube personalities, they got their start playing, or yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
Markiplier. Was that the bite of 87? That put a lot of YouTubers and streamers over the top.
Yeah.
That was Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah.
And it's every now and then a developer, usually an indie developer, comes up with this game loop, this formula, this idea that is so potent and so effective that it's like whoever made the first, I think it was an Arma 3 mod, whoever made the first battle royale game.
Sorry, yeah, my bad.
Well, that one, I think that one too, but yeah, whoever made the first battle royale game, it's like they caught fire, and it's like every other Fortnite, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, they all took it with it. So Five Nights at Freddy's, I don't know if it was copied all that often, because it's so distilled. But it's just such an effective thing. Let's talk about the lore.
Yeah.
Not deep into the lore, but just the overall aesthetic of it, the depth of the lore. This is not a cutscene kind of game, but the lore just outpaces it so much, Joe.
That's why I wanted to hit on sort of too, talking just about the games in general. What I remember when buying it, because this came out, and I was a senior in high school when this came out. I was done with high school actually by the time this came out. I was going to college. So me and my friends are just hanging out late at night, and we're just like shooting the shit during the summer. And this came out, I think, I remember the first game came out 2 weeks before college started, and we're just having our like going away party. Kids are going away. Some kids are going to community college, and I remember telling everybody this game. Like, no, dude. I'm like, dude, this is like one of the creepiest games I play because just the atmosphere of this game. Like Dom is saying, there's no cutscenes to this game. So it's not like you sit down and you watch a cutscene, then you start playing. No, this game starts out, you're just already in the security booth, and this guy's telling you over voicemail, like, yeah, sometimes these animatronics move and everything. And you're like, wait, what? And the voicemail just like ends there. And now you're stuck there for the next 20 minutes, like waiting for 5 a.m. to hit where you can get out of there and go to the next night. And you're just going through security cameras, and you see these animatronics just sitting there, like staring off to the side like this. And sometimes you'll flip back a camera, and it'll be like the head will like turn just slightly, and you're like, that. I'm pretty sure they were looking for more off to the right. And as each night went on, and the crazier you got, it did such a great job at building atmosphere that like a filmmaker can, I think, easily replicate that. We've seen it done with films where like they play with like tricks with your mind, and like, was that there before? Was that, all that stuff? Like, it's definitely easy to take that. And Scott, to answer your question from earlier, Dom, Scott is involved as a screenwriter in this for creating the characters and just kind of like a storyboard, like, kind of person. And he is producing it with Jason Blum. They're working alongside together. So he does have some involvement in this film, and probably a lot to say in terms of creative choices. Because I remember like reading interviews that he would not sell the film rights unless if he agreed on the script 100%. Like, he was sold on it. He was like, okay, this is it. This is what I want the movie to be. He has retired, like you said, from making the games now back in 2022. But I think this might be like the last project he'll do, and then he's like officially just done with Five Nights at Freddy's in general. But we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, man, I mean, like learning about what happened at Five Nights at Freddy's, like in the past, in the 80s, before it had this closure and everything, what it led to, and then why you're still like, you know, why is someone being paid to come watch a pizzeria that's abandoned and just has animatronics? Like, why is someone being paid? And just the mystery behind all of that is just...
Because that was my first question. Don't ruin it for me. But that was my first question. I was like, why does this pizzeria have a night security guard in the first place?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Cawthon is the is got a screenplay credit on this, as you said, with Emma Tammy, who is the director of this, and Seth Cudback. Now, I can't wait for this. I'm super pumped. I can't wait to review it on the show. I think this has. I don't want to put the cart before the horse over here, but given the people involved, the actors involved, and how deliciously juicy that teaser was, I feel like we didn't talk much about the teaser, but like. The teaser itself is just really good because it doesn't give away any major plot points. It shows you just very briefly sort of the world in which this exists. It's timed perfectly with a training video too. And so it creates this sort of like almost like 80s era like horror intrigue to it. I'm stoked for this thing. I think this thing has potential to be a friggin' banger. For Blumhouse, quality, and Jason Blum is talking up the hell out of this thing, and I love like just his like it comes through in his many tweets about this thing. I think I get the sense that he's super proud of this one.
The fact that we have the Jim Henson company coming in to do the animatronics for these things. That just,
I did not know that.
Thank you. I wanted to bring that up too. Yep.
The excuse me.
Okay.
The fact we have that coming in to help with that, we have the creator here. We have a studio that likes to like allow creative, you know, choices and everything. You know, restrictive budgets, but like totally freedom of like, you know, how they want to do it and everything. It made me so excited. Like I look at this, I'm like, this. As big of a Mario fan as I am, that was like a very like, hey, we're playing this totally safe. This to me, and I'm not comparing the two. I will when we review this and everything, of course. This is a totally different ballgame. But this to me is like, I'm way more excited for this because it's like it really feels like they're doing justice for an adaptation and also doing their own thing with it. The fact that
and Matthew Lillard, Lillard being in this movie is the icing on the cake. I'm like, that's perfect cast. I don't even know what character he's. I think I know. I have a feeling what character he's gonna play. I don't know if he's a new or you're made for the movie just to help narratively come along, but that's great. That gives it so much actor credibility.
Same with Josh Hutcherson, man. Like, you know, love seeing that kid from time to time.
Who just does not age. Who just does not age at all. That kid looks the exact same. I say he's a kid, but like he looks the exact same as he did. Always.
There is not to be Debbie Downer, and I won't be. There is a small part of me that wishes. And this is me being indecisive. The part of me wishes that, you know, it could have been a little more atmospheric, a little more psychological. Because, well, I don't know for sure, but this seems like it's going to be more crowd pleasing, a little more on the slasher scream side. It's going to have its creepy moments, but it's going to be more on that crowd pleasing side, more maybe 80s fun side to it, which is perfectly fine. It's going to, I hope it's, if it's going to dedicate to that, I hope I have a great time in that theater. Part of me wishes, though, that it captured more of like, you know, the first 15 seconds of every playthrough of every round where it's like, oh God, I'm back in the booth. Nothing started yet. I don't have control yet. It's those pivotal like 5 to 7 seconds.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, here comes the voicemail, you know, and it just the hum of like the generator or like the lights,
the fan.
Thank you. Yes, the fan. Like, dude, that to me, that could be a whole tone. For a whole maybe short film or like a 90-80 minute thing. But yeah,
I was gonna say I'm really hoping we do get a sequence like that where it's very
at least a sequence,
a little to no dialogue, and it's just Josh kind of coming to terms of like, what the hell is going on here? And yeah, totally. I mean, I from that teaser alone, just seeing it I very much see like kind of like as Steve was saying, a fun, or you were saying this, a fun like 80s horror thing. I kind of see a little bit of Gremlins with it, maybe even
a little bit.
killer clowns from outer space, like type of vibe, possibly. We'll see. I mean, it's such a good teaser because it just makes you want to know more. And then we'll see what happens when we get that first official trailer, of course, that like, hey, okay, we know what kind of direction they're taking. I can't wait to see more from this movie. I might even avoid the trailers. That's how excited I am for it. I'm not even that big of a fan of the game, but just like this brought me back to, yeah, that summer where I did play that first one on my laptop and told everybody about it, and even the second one. So I just can't wait to see like what they end up doing with this.
I'll end on this note too. I'll say this. We are going to fucking eat in October, man. There is so much coming out. We got Killers of the Flower Moon, the new Scorsese movie. We've got Five Nights at Freddy's. We got this really good Hilary Swank drama called Ordinary Angels about this town rallying during a blizzard to save this like young sick girl's life. That just sounds really fascinating to me on paper. Saw 10 comes out, like, and that's not including the stuff that hasn't been announced yet. That's gonna drop. And The Exorcist. I almost forgot The Exorcist Believer too, the David Gordon Green movie.
Yep.
We are gonna fucking eat in October. I cannot wait. It's my favorite month of the year for a lot of reasons, and we are getting out Five Nights at Freddy's. It's a cornucopia.
I'm going. I'll put in my excuse when it happens, but if there is a fan screening of it Wednesday night, I am sorry, I'm going to it. I want.
That's going to be the best possible showing.
I want to be there.
Oh well, shit. Well, if there is, we might have to call off the show because I want to be there too.
I think that'll be such a great screen to be involved with because it will be such a good mix of people our age that played it when it started, and as Dom was saying earlier when we were texting each other, another age group that like grew up playing.
Yes,
going into high school and college.
Johnny Come Latelys who read the Wikipedia synopses.
2012, like the first game came out in 2012, and it was like that intergenerational thing where like, dude, I believe me when I say this, a lot of kids when it came out, the first like 5 games came out, so many children, like 6-year-olds, gravitated toward this game.
Yeah.
I think, well, it was so pervasive online. Sorry to make a whole point at the end here, but like it was so pervasive online. And I think a lot of them that was the product that came out with that aesthetic and that kind of scares, that kind of pervasive online following. So many children like gravitated towards that game. I was watching like, 6-7-year-old, like little distant cousins of mine play this game. And I'm like, God damn, really? So yeah, people our age love it. Older people love it. Or like, or older millennials like it. And like Gen Zs love this franchise.
And like the people that grew up playing it, or like that you said, the young kids that play it, they're like what now? 7, like they were 7 in like 2012. What are they now?
Dude,
like
this is
what are they now? 17, 18 years old?
Probably.
Yeah, this is gonna make so much money from like so many different demographics within the younger group.
I'm psyched for it. That's our show, though, tonight. A little bit of a long show, but a great show, no less. We pretty much made up time for a 12-minute prelude talking about everything but the death of Dick Long, so that works really nicely. Next week, it's Fast X. Joe's excited, at least. I'm excited for when I'm sitting here and writing my review about 21 hours from now. That's when I'll be excited. And we're getting another movie now too. It's supposed to only be. I was told that there was only going to be Fast X and then Fast 11. Turns out there's going to be a fucking 12th one now too. So one of us is psyched. We'll be back here tomorrow. We'll be back here next Wednesday to review Fast X. We will dive into that movie, which is also, fun fact, the 8th most expensive movie ever made now at $340 million. The 8th most expensive film ever made. $117 million less than The Force Awakens, which is the most expensive film ever made. Fun fact. I leave you with that bit of wisdom. We will be back here next week on Sleepless with Steve, same time, same place, to review Fast X. Until then, wrapping up a great show for Joe Viso, Dominic Guanzon, and yours truly, this has been Sleepless with Steve.